This unfolding story centers on a high-stakes clash between political leadership, federal law enforcement credibility, and media accountability. At the heart of it is FBI Director Kash Patel, now facing serious allegations reported by multiple sources and amplified by political opponents. What makes this moment particularly consequential isn't just the claims themselves, but the institutional weight behind them, the FBI, the Department of Justice, and the broader question of public trust. As you watch, consider not only what is being said, but who is saying it, and what evidence is, or isn't, being presented.
Patel must resign immediately. Every day he remains in office subjects America to serious and unnecessary risks.
Every time I see President Trump, he says this repeatedly, that the election was rigged in 2020. I mean, he says it all the time. We all know that. And it's almost getting lost because he says it so much. You've been at the FBI now 14 months. Have you done anything about that? And do you have anything to tell us about that?
Absolutely, Maria. Look, I've been with the president nearly since day one on this. We've got all the evidence. I can announce on your show that we've got all the information we need. We're working with our prosecutors at the Department of Justice and their Attorney General Todd Blanche, and we are going to be making arrests, and it's coming, and I promise you, it's coming soon.
The political shockwaves radiating from Kash Patel reached critical mass this week, punctuated by Senator Chuck Schumer's uncompromising demand for his immediate resignation. Armed with a cascade of damning reports detailing what he characterized as a pattern of deranged behavior, the Democratic leader has drawn an undeniable line in the sand. This has escalated far beyond Washington's choreographed partisan skirmishes. Schumer's ultimatum aggressively reframes Patel's tenure from a routine political headache into an acute institutional crisis. The senator is wagering that the sheer gravity of these allegations will force a definitive reckoning, daring the Capitol to decide whether Patel's volatility is a manageable quirk or a fatal liability that can no longer be ignored.
I don't know. I feel like things always happen on a Friday. Big stories break on a Friday. And as I just mentioned with Chris, but in case you haven't seen it, there is some breaking news. This absolutely bonkers story that just posted tonight concerning, well, the clown car of people who make up Trump's cabinet. And I mean, this time it's really focused on FBI Director Kash Patel. And it's an explosive news story in The Atlantic that just posted. It cites dozens of FBI sources, which is a big deal. It's a lot of sources in this story detailing new allegations about Patel, including some sources who say Patel is frequently drunk on the job, regularly absent from work, and paranoid about getting fired. And there's quite an anecdote about that we're going to talk about. And I'm just going to read you a few of the key passages because I think that will tell you everything you need to know about this story. Here's one. Several officials told The Atlantic that Patel's drinking has been a recurring source of concern across the government. Early in his tenure, meetings and briefings had to be rescheduled for later in the day as a result of his alcohol-fueled nights. 6 current and former officials and others familiar with Patel's schedule told The Atlantic. As a sidebar, not normal. I've worked in 2 administrations. Again, back to the quote. On multiple occasions in the past year, members of his security detail had difficulty waking Patel because he was seemingly intoxicated. This was Chris was just referencing. And that's according to information supplied to Justice Department and White House officials. A request for breaching equipment, normally used by SWAT and hostage rescue teams to quickly gain entry into buildings, was made last year because Patel had been unreachable behind locked doors, according to multiple people familiar with the request. Multiple officials also tell The Atlantic that Patel is deeply concerned that his job is in jeopardy. Well, that's understandable. In one incident earlier this month, Patel struggled to log into an internal computer system. He quickly became convinced that he had been locked out, and he panicked, frantically calling aides and allies to announce that he had been fired by the White House, according to 9 people familiar with his outreach. 9 people. Now, the access problem turned out to, quote, have been a technical error, and it was quickly resolved. And that's according to 2 people familiar with the matter.
Battled FBI Director Kash Patel is facing an unprecedented leadership crisis fueled by allegations of chronic absenteeism, rampant on-the-job intoxication, and crippling paranoia. Dozens of deeply unsettled FBI sources have leaked a damning portrait of an increasingly erratic...
At this stage, the narrative shifts from isolated allegations to a broader institutional concern. Reports citing dozens of sources can signal credibility, but they also raise important media literacy questions. How are these sources verified? And what motivations might they have? Allegations of misconduct at this level, especially involving national security, are typically subject to internal investigations, inspector general reviews, or congressional oversight. Yet here, much of the public conversation is unfolding through media leaks and political statements. That creates a tension between transparency and due process. So the key question becomes, should the public treat these claims as urgent warnings, or as unproven allegations requiring further verification? And how do we balance accountability with the presumption of innocence in such high-profile cases?
Director wielding aggressive polygraph tests as weapons of self-preservation. This volatility recently culminated in bizarre operational anomalies, including a frantic incident where personnel were reportedly forced to breach secure equipment merely to access him, while Patel's crisis communications team hastily spins the access fiasco as a technical error, and his advisors lob threats of litigation to suppress the narrative as fabricated. Investigative reporter Sarah Fitzpatrick stands unyielding by her explosive expose, refusing to bow to the administration's aggressive pushback. Fitzpatrick's steadfast reporting underscores a profound systemic crisis. This is no longer a standard Washington turf war. Patel's alleged downward spiral has genuine intelligence professionals sounding the alarm by weaponizing loyalty tests while allegedly battling severe substance issues. Patel has prompted grave whispers inside the Hoover building, with veteran agents openly questioning if the man tasked with safeguarding the nation has become an active threat to America's security.
On Kash Patel, the American people expect competence from the president's cabinet, not the unmitigated and continuing chaos we see every day. Over the weekend, more damning reports about FBI Director Kash Patel's disorderly, drunken, and deranged behavior came to light. The Atlantic's reporting only confirmed what Senate Democrats have said from the start. Kash Patel is not simply unqualified. He's a grave risk to the rule of law and to American national security. I have called on Acting Attorney General Blanche to preserve all records, all communications, and other evidence regarding Kash Patel's dangerous behavior before the Trump administration tries to brush it under the rug. Again, we're calling on Acting Attorney General Blanche to preserve all records, communications, and other evidence regarding Kash Patel's dangerous behavior before the Trump administration tries to brush it under the rug. The Atlantic interviewed dozens of people who have observed Patel's erratic behavior, his excessive drinking. Apparently, Patel frequently misses key briefings and meetings because he's too hungover to attend. Patel's security detail often struggles to wake him up after his nights of partying, and once even had to ask for breaching equipment because Patel was unresponsive behind a locked door. All of this is made even worse by the reports of Kash Patel's constant jet setting on the taxpayer's dime, his illegal crusade against Trump's political enemies, and his purge of countless counterintelligence officers who focused on Iran just days before Trump launched this reckless war. Americans deserve steady, sober leadership from their FBI director, and they're not getting it, it seems, in any way. Kash Patel's job is to protect the American people and our Constitution, not to party on the job. Patel must resign immediately. Every day he remains in office subjects America to serious and unnecessary risks.
FBI Director Kash Patel on defense this morning, denying allegations laid out in a new report detailing his alleged drinking habits and absences from the Bureau. This article in The Atlantic cites more than 24 people, including unnamed current and former FBI officials, who allege excessive drinking and erratic behavior, described as, quote, freakouts from Patel. Several officials cited say Patel is known for, quote, obvious intoxication at private clubs, both here in Washington and in Las Vegas, and that many staffers are just waiting for the announcement that Patel is going to be fired from his post, citing his unreachability and impulsivity. The Atlantic also wrote that President Trump has complained Patel has seemed unprepared for TV appearances and that some investigations he directed Patel to pursue haven't moved quickly enough. Patel took to social media to defend himself, writing in part, quote, "No amount of BS you write will ever deter this FBI from making America safe again." Yesterday, he announced on Fox News that, plus his plans to sue The Atlantic for defamation. But notably, he also took time in that interview to promise that the DOJ would soon be making arrests related to the 2020 election. Watch. Every time I see President Trump, he says this repeatedly, that the election was rigged in 2020. I mean, he says it all the time. We all know that. And it's almost getting lost because he says it so much. You've been at the FBI now 14 months. Have you done anything about that? And do you have anything to tell us about that?
Absolutely, Maria. Look, I've been with the president nearly since day one on this. We've got all the evidence. I can announce on your show that we've got all the information we need. We're working with our prosecutors at the Department of Justice and their Attorney General Todd Blanche, and we are going to be making arrests. And it's coming, and I promise you, it's coming soon.
FBI Director Kash Patel has vehemently rejected the explosive allegations of chronic intoxication and institutional paranoia published by The Atlantic, pivoting swiftly from public defense to outright institutional warfare, dismissing the harrowing portrait of his leadership as a fabricated hit piece. Patel is currently mobilizing a high-stakes defamation lawsuit against the legacy publication, signaling a chilling escalation in his war on the press. Yet this aggressive legal posturing is merely the opening salvo in a broader, far more alarming political distraction strategy. Rather than just fighting for his bruised reputation, the director has dramatically escalated the partisan stakes, publicly declaring that the Department of Justice is poised to unleash a wave of imminent arrests connected to the relentlessly debunked claims of a rigged 2020 presidential election. By conflating his personal vendetta against investigative journalism with the state's immense prosecutorial power, Patel is orchestrating a massive media misdirection. For political observers and media watchdogs alike, the chilling message is unmistakable. Patel is willing to leverage the full, terrifying apparatus of the DOJ, not just to settle old partisan scores, but to desperately silence the mounting institutional alarm over his increasingly volatile tenure.
What we've seen here is more than a political controversy. It's a test of institutional resilience and public trust. On one side, there are serious allegations backed by multiple reported sources and echoed by political leaders. On the other, there is a firm denial, legal threats against the press, and a counter-narrative framing the reports as misinformation. The truth likely depends on evidence that goes beyond headlines, investigations, documentation, and due process. For viewers, the takeaway is clear. In an era of rapid information flow, critical thinking matters more than ever. So what do you think? Are these allegations a legitimate warning sign, or part of a broader political and media battle? Share your perspective in the comments, and if you value balanced, fact-based analysis like this, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more in-depth breakdowns.